Okay. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you in this webinar today. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. My name is Francesca Cenin and I'm a Program Management Officer at the BRS Secretariat. This webinar session, in particular, it is organized in the framework of the dissemination activities of the follow-up partnership to PACE in cooperation with GIZ and the Ministry for Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation of Ghana. The session today focuses on e-waste management in Ghana, conflict resolution, activities and approaches in Agbogbloshi in Accra. Let's start going through the agenda of today's webinar. After this brief introduction, there will be the presentations on the regulatory framework for e-waste management in Ghana by Miss Lydia Eswa from MESTI, the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, and then a presentation on e-waste management in Ghana, introducing the conflict resolution measures, activities and approaches in the old Fadama scrapyard or Agbogbloshi in Accra. And this presentation will be provided by Markus Spitzbar and Miss Veronica Johannes from GIZ, the German Development Cooperation Agency of Germany. Right after the presentations, the floor will be opened to questions and comments from your side. In case you wish to take the floor, please click the raise hand icon beside your name in the participants list, and we will give you the floor. I will now pass the floor to the presenters, and I ask them to introduce themselves briefly prior to starting their presentation. The first presenter is Miss Lydia Eswan from MESTI in Ghana. Please, Miss Eswan, you have the floor to introduce yourself and start with the first presentation.
Thank you very much, Francesca. As you mentioned, my name is Lydia Eswa. I work as the director responsible for policy, planning, monitoring, and evaluation at the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology, and Innovation here in Ghana. As part of my portfolio, I am responsible for the formulation of policies with regards to environment sector and also the science and technology sector. I also happen to be the coordinator, the director who coordinates the e-waste program at the national level here at the ministry. So I work closely with the major stakeholders, including GIZ and other development partners who also support the e-waste management in Ghana here. So thank you very much for the opportunity. So I guess I take the floor for the presentation as well, Francesca.
Yes, please. You can start with the presentation.
So the outline of the presentation is a brief introduction. I'll also provide some information on the policy, legal and regulatory frameworks that Ghana as a country has put in place for the sustainable management of electronic waste. I would also provide some information on the national e-waste program as we currently have it here in Ghana. And then in addition to what government is doing, we also have other development partners also supporting in various aspects of the management of e-waste. So I would also provide some information on the partners that are also implementing other interventions in the e-waste sector. So for the introduction, in the last 10 years, Ghana has seen an increase in its population. In 2010, Ghana moved from mainly rural country to an urban country. So we have a population that is higher in the urban areas than in the rural area. Because of this, many people have resorted to the use of electronic devices. And as such, when these devices reach their end of life use, then they create waste for us that we need to manage. It's estimated that we have about 50,000 to 60,000 tons of electronic waste in Ghana here. In addition to this, the current practice of recycling and disposing of the electronic waste is something that is not acceptable for us as a government. And if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, you will see a gentleman burning something. So what a gentleman is burning is cables from electronic equipment, burning so that they can get the copper out of it. Now, this practice has led to the contamination of the soil, especially at a location in Accra, where we call the Old Fadama or Agbogbloshi. The place is heavily polluted. There is evidence of significant persistent organic pollutants, and it's resulting in the negative impact on the environment and on the health of the people who work within that enclave. Approximately about 1,178 kilograms of e-waste is burnt daily at Agbogbloshi. As a result of this burning, it affects the e-waste collectors who work in Agbogbloshi. And these guys are mainly in the informal sector. And because they are not formalized, they bear the great potential for this collection. We don't have a formalized setting of collection for electronic waste. So the informal sector is the ones that are very dominant in the collection space. And the literature that we have so far points to the fact that their collection system or mechanism is sort of efficient. And if we want to put a figure on it, we can say that we have about 95% collection rate in Ghana here. So we have the informal people who spread themselves out and are able to collect these waste from the nooks and crannies of the city and be able to bring it to a central location, which is Agbogbloshi. So in addition to the environmental and hazard health risks that they encounter as a result of their work, they are also vulnerable because they depend solely on their e-waste. And estimatedly about 1,500 people at the scrap yard the sole work that they do is working on aspects of electronic waste collection and recycling. So in terms of the legal background, in 2016, we passed the Hazardous and Electronic Waste Control and Management Act. And then we went ahead to also pass the Hazardous Electronic and Other Waste Classification, Control and Management Regulation, which is the legislative instrument 2250 to operationalize the acts. In addition, we've also worked together with SRI on the technical guidelines on environmentally sound e-waste management, and this was done in 2018. The national e-waste program that we have in Ghana was officially launched in August 2018 by His Excellency the President, Nana Akufo-Addo. In terms of the objectives, the national e-waste system is to operationalize the implementation of the Act 917, which was passed in 2016, and also build on the lessons learned from the pilot projects. I mentioned earlier on that we have a number of development partners who are also implementing projects within the e-waste space. So those lessons that will be learned from the pilot projects, the national system will build on those lessons. It also has the objective of creating business and job opportunities for the private sector, especially the focus is on the youth. And also we intend to use the national system to reduce pollution of the natural environment. As part of the framework, the legal frameworks that have been put in place, there's a collection of what we call the advanced eco levy on all imported electrical and electronic equipment. And the act, by its enactment, established what we call the e-waste fund. So once the eco levy is collected into the e-waste fund, and we have an administrator who manages that fund. So the collection is ongoing, and in terms of operational activities, there are efforts ongoing to integrate. We have a service provider, SGS, who is managing that integration with our national customs operations and database system as well. The fund administrator has been appointed in 2019. Some collection centers have also been set up, not under the national system, but by the projects that are currently ongoing. As part of the implementation of the Act, we are supposed to set up a state-of-the-art recycling facility at Agbogbloshi. That is yet to come. So by way of a pictorial view, this is the structure of the national e-waste scheme. So on my left-hand side, we have the e-waste holder or producer, and it's collected by a collector or repair shop operators. And then they will now move it into a collection center. At the collection center, the service provider may also do dismantling or may leave it as a whole product and transport it into what we call a national holding center. From the holding center, it's again transported to a recycling plant for it to be recycled in an environmentally sound manner. And for the aspects, the negative fractions that cannot be recycled in country, if we have to export outside, then that export is also done. The other interventions that we have the KFW supporting us with a financial cooperation to pilot an incentive system for the collection of cables, mixed batteries, CRTs, and thermoplastics. We also have Sustainable Recycle Industries, SRI, also implementing a number of projects. So for the FC projects, like I mentioned, we have 10 million euro for the phase 1. And the main objective is to pilot the incentive system so that the national system will learn from the lessons that we learned. So it was officially launched. Currently, we have rolled out the collection of 2 e-waste fractions, the mixed batteries and the cables. So this picture shows us taking our minister around when the mixed battery was launched. We are also under the FC working on the construction of a handover center where the informal sector collectors of e-waste will bring the e-waste for them to receive some incentives so they do not go to burn the e-waste. Additionally, we have the support by GIZ. In the phase 1, they provided support for policy advice, business models, and capacity building within the informal sector. And we had a number of successes under the phase 1. On the extreme right, top right, you would see before 2017 picture In 2019, we have a very decent football pitch where the informal collectors are able to have recreation there. We also have a training center and a help post. All those deliverables were delivered under the phase 1 of the e-waste project under GIZ. We are currently in the phase 2, and I'm sure when Marcus and Veronica take their turn, they will give us more details into the successes of the program. So for SRI, they are also in their phase 2. In phase 1, they helped us with the coming up of the technical guidelines on environmentally sound e-waste management. And in the phase 2, they are also going to support us with SOPs for ULABs. Other donors that are helping, we have the EU helping eMargin to also help formalization of the informal sector. So we have scrap dealers associations that are not formalized. So eMargin is helping in their formalization. They are also helping with capacity building. We also, until recently, have had a project that we are implementing with the World Bank with support from Jeff, and it's a regional project. Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, Tanzania, and Zambia are participating in that project. The focus is actually on 2 fronts: management of e-waste and also management of mercury in artisanal mining. Thank you very much. This is my presentation.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Ms. Etsua. I would like now to introduce the second presentation on e-waste management in Ghana, conflict resolution activities and approaches on the Old Panama scrapyard by Mr. Marcus Spitzbar and Ms. Veronica Johannes from GIZ. Please introduce yourself briefly prior to starting the presentation.
Then I will start, I think, Marcus. My name is Veronica Johannes. I've been working on the Old Fadama scrapyard since 2017 and working with the GIZ since 2018. I'm mainly working on the Old Fadama scrapyard within the program, which is Pillar 3. And this is where I coordinate all the activities that we are currently doing. Marcus, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, good. Sorry. Yeah, then you didn't hear my introduction. Marcus Spitzbart. I'm the coordinator for the GIZ program on e-waste in Ghana. Me and as the whole team, we are located in Accra. I live in Accra since 2017. Can you please start with the presentation? Maybe as the presentation from our presentation is uploaded, I would like to give you a short overview of what we are presenting. In the beginning, we give you a short overview about the program, some main figures, and then our main part will be diving a little into the scrapyard to give some insight how the scrapyard Agbogbloshi is organized, as there are a lot of polemic out in the world about how different things are happening on the scrapyard. And as we are working on the scrapyard since 2017, I think the program, we have the best overview to give this insight. And then we pick out some of the activities, some of the interventions on the scrapyard that we're doing, and go a little bit more into detail on that. You can give the next slide. Yeah, as a leader in her presentation already said, the main objective of the program, or the main purpose of the program, is to support the Ghanaian government, in particular through a strong collaboration with MESTI, with the Ministry for Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, to improve the conditions for sustainable e-waste management in Ghana. The whole program is commissioned by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, and currently we're in the second phase, which has a duration up until January 2023. Both phases so far have been commissioned with 5 million euro. Actually, the second phase was 5.5 million, as we got some extra as well money for COVID-19 measures. So you can go to the next slide. And the main coordinator is, the main partner organization in the country is MESTI. We work with a lot of other organizations together on the international level, you know, organizations like World Resources Forum, Öko Institute, providing consultancy services, as well a very strong collaboration with the state government of North Rhine-Westphalia, which come in with additional funds, which we don't have, where we don't have a mandate through our program. Yeah, like the setup of a health clinic and further measures. And on the national level as well, we work with a lot of authorities together. Environmental protection, apart from MESTI, environmental protection agency has a very crucial role. The municipalities in Accra, the AMA and the Agbogbloshie Central municipality, but as well National Youth Authority, which is the landowner of the Agbogbloshie scrapyard, and several startups and consulting companies. As well, you see here as well EVROT, the e-waste recycling association. I think certainly that Alexander will go a little bit more into detail in the follow-up presentation slots. Is an association of recycling companies going into already in e-waste recycling, is a result of our first phase through a stakeholder dialogue with the recycling companies. Next slide, please. Yeah, as Lydia has already said as well, Ghana has a very efficient collection system through the informal sector. And this is a quite nice picture how they do it. They have these push carts, walking around with these push carts all over the city, buying e-waste scrap, but not only scrap e-waste, but as well a whole lot of other metal scrap. Bring them to mainly Agbogbloshie, but there's some other smaller scrapyards in the city as well, where they treat it. Next slide, please. And even then, if you look into the scrapyard there, can you click further so that we have the, yeah. And even though if we look there, some, you know, and this is where then the problem starts, because then treatment starts there. A lot of treatment steps starts with substandard or with low standards and with producing environmental pollution. But even there, we can see some of the processes, like on the left bottom, which is a reuse activity, which can we don't see any need for further changes, or on the left up one only with small changes. So there are a lot of few processes as well already working on the scrapyard which don't produce environmental pollution, and where with small adaptations environmental sound e-waste management can be reached. Although there are a lot of processes there which have to be banned from the scrapyard, like the burning or the as well treatment of lead acid batteries, where the workshops on the scrapyards don't have the necessary equipment or machinery to do that properly. And for others, we have to look into measures how they can be transformed be to become environmental sound. Next slide, please. So it's really important to look into the detailed processes, not to have this Vogelperspektive from looking from the upwards down. It's really something where you have to stay on the scrapyard and look into the different processes. According to our mandate that we've got from the Ghanaian government, our main approaches in the program are transformation of the old Fadama scrapyards into that still has to be defined, something environmental sound recycling park, but as well maintaining its individual character. Next slide. And what is to do that, it's very crucial to redesign these interfaces between the informal sector and formal recycling, or in many cases, not only redesign, but even to create these interfaces. And this is one of the things Lydia already mentioned in the incentive system, which MESTI by itself coordinates to be introduced. And this is one of the parts that I think the second presentation on e-waste management in Ghana is specifically focusing on, where we don't go into detail this time. Next slide. And therefore, when these interfaces are designed, destining critical fractions to proper recycling, disposal, but as well fostering young entrepreneurs and innovative startups ideas. Next slide. And a fourth approach, extracting and proposing potential general solutions based on the pilot experiences. As we currently work a lot on the old Fadama scrapyard, we try to as well make the experiences, lessons learned that we have there available for other scrapyards. And a very strong approach as well is a stakeholder dialogue on focusing different stakeholder groups. Yeah. Next slide. So if we look into the whole program, the program is organized in three main pillars. One, addressing the public stakeholders, mainly providing specific capacity building, but as well working on specific solutions on the national level, like supporting the e-waste recycling fund in developing a pricing system, as well coming up with potential operator models for the collections systems and so on. Then there's a pillar focusing or addressing cooperations between the private sector, where we still cooperate very strongly with eWater, with the Association for the Former Recyclers, but as well we promote entrepreneurship startups to go into the business with upcycling, and we have a specific model on social recycling business. And then we have our main interventions on the old Fadama scrapyard, which we focus, which is the main focus for the presentation today. Next click, please. In our present now, all four of them. Next one. Yeah, and yeah. In our presentation today, we will focus on the technical performance, how to improve how to bring processes on the scrapyard into an environmental sound level. As well, this is very much linked up with the permitting process, the promises to formalize informal sector workshops. And then we'll give an insight on the activities in our TTC, the Technical Training Center, how we do capacity building on the scrapyard on an individual and an organizational level. Next slide. Yeah, and this is where I hand over to Veronica.
Yes.
It's your part now.
Marcus, can you just tell me if you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Old Fadama scrapyard and what makes it such a complex space to work in. I'm going to leave my camera off because I'm going to have a lot of different animations and pictures. So it's better if you just focus on that. So we're talking about the scrapyard at the heart of the city in Accra here. So basically, it's this outlined area right here. Although, as you can see, most activities are really concentrated in the lower part of the map. We estimate around 5,000 people working in scrap-related jobs and another 4,000 collectors coming in and out of the scrapyard daily, mostly in the mornings and in the evenings. So we're talking about many different ethnicities, many different tribes and nationalities working in this very densely populated area. And the most dominant ethnicity is that of the Dagomba, who are migrants from northern parts of Ghana. And why this is so relevant for the scrapyard is that between the Dagombas is what can best be described as an intra-ethnic conflict between two different Dagomba groups, the Abudus and the Andanis. This conflict can be traced back to almost 200 years ago, but it still very much has ripple effects wherever the Dagombas are. And in the 60s, this conflict was politicized, affecting in the Abudus following what we now consider the NPP, and then Danis following what can now best be described as the NDC political direction. And this intra-ethnic politicized conflict also influences strongly the leadership that we have on the scrapyard. So GASDA, the Greater Accra Scrap Dealers Association, is supposed to be the organization that represents scrap dealers all over the Greater Accra region, but unfortunately, they are perceived, or they are currently still politicized through this conflict, and this causes a rift between the members and the non-members of GASDA. So basically, every time there's elections in Ghana and the political party in power changes, so does the leadership. And this constant change of leadership is also the reason for mushroom scrapyards all over the Greater Accra region due to evictions and violent shop takeovers after the elections. So as we can see, this is already a very complex system internally, and then we have also some external factors that shape the dynamics on the scrapyard. We have a high international and national interest in Agbogbloshie and to Agbogbloshie, and this affects in many different interventions that are often uncohesive, incohesive, and unaligned. So another considerable factor is the amount of economic groups that we have on the land. We can start with scrap-related job groups like car dismantlers to e-waste dismantlers. We have the repairers, as Marcus has already mentioned. There are shop owners. Then we have the boys, which are basically, they're called the boys. Basically, they're the employees of the shop owners. We have upcyclers working with the scraps on the scrapyard. We also have burners. We have artisans and smelters and making, they smelt aluminum and use it to make coal pots that are sold all around Ghana. We have oil collectors, and we have, of course, the scrap collectors who are constantly bringing scrap in and out of the scrapyard. They can do this on three-wheel tricycles, but also sometimes with huge trucks coming in, or by foot, or on bicycles, typically any type of vehicle imaginable. We also have a lot of women working on the scrapyard. Mostly we're talking about head sellers, so kayaye, as we call them in Ghana. They are responsible for providing the scrap workers and everybody else working on the scrapyard with food, medication, and drinks. There's also a lot of restaurants, or as we call them here, chop bars. So there's a lot of women working as cooks on the scrapyard. We have also cattle farmers, we have goat farmers on the scrapyard. And if you're lucky, you will come across this lady. She's called Abena. She's the popcorn lady on the scrapyard. And sometimes you find very strange things, like Mohammed, who has a huge monkey pet. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you will also find him on the scrapyard. And Marcus will now elaborate how this diversity also shapes the economic flow. Marcus? Marcus, we can't hear you. So sorry again, everybody, for that. I will take over the presentation. I just gave you a little bit of an insight to the social structures and social dynamics on the scrapyard. And now we want to talk a little bit about how these social structures also have an influence on the economic flow on the scrapyard. So basically what you see in front of you, it looks very complex, but it's supposed to look complex because it's supposed to represent a typical material flow. And in this case, we're talking about desktop computer dismantling. So we see from the left side, the desktop PC comes into the scrapyard, and on the right side, the many different steps that this desktop computer and its different fractions undergo on the scrapyard. And as we can already see in this illustration as well, the different process steps and or different fractions are mainly dominated always by either a nationality or an ethnicity or a tribe. So usually when we're talking about desktop computer dismantling, the first stage of the dismantling of these devices is dominated by the Nigerians on the scrapyard, alongside some other dismantling steps. And some of the dismantling steps and fractions are predominantly done by the Dagombas. So this is the strategy that we are using to connect the national e-waste strategy to our implementation on the ground. Basically, we are doing a three-step approach. We have one of our key factors on the scrapyard, the assessment of processes and the definition of technical solutions, and that, as well as community building on the scrapyard and capacity measures. These are aimed at getting the experience that we need from a bottom to top approach. So we take all of this information, implementing these activities on the scrapyard, and we insert them into finding a permitting system together with the ministry. So the assessment of processes, which is the first step before the definition of technical solutions, is here we can see, for example, compressor dismantling that is happening, and what the Environmental Protection Agency is currently working on. What we are supporting them with is the development of standard operating procedures. So on the right side here, you can see an example of how these standard operating procedures look like. We've done this now first as a pilot using the compressor dismantling process to develop these standard operating procedures together with the Environmental Protection Agency. And this is what the template currently looks like. And basically what this standard operating procedure, this SOP, is supposed to give is the information to the scrap dealers and the shop owners on how to improve their processes in order to be able to properly work on the scrapyard under the legal frameworks that are given. And they're also supposed to give the Environmental Protection Agency a template with their requirements so that they can follow up on who is following these regulations. Here we have something that we built actually last week. So we're trying out different pilots, really going on the scrapyard. Here we built an oil trap at the Technical Training Center with some scrap workers as well, trying to figure out how we can really build technical solutions on the ground to kind of hold this oil trap so that it can be dismantled properly without the oil spilling into the ground. Currently, as you can see in the picture before that we showed, they're dismantling these oil traps and hammering them with hammer and chisel on the ground, which causes a lot of the oil to leak into the soil. So this is an environmental pollution that happens in one of these process steps that we're trying to stop. And this is just a very simple pilot technical solution that we're trying out on the Old Fadama scrapyard. We did a very elaborate process analysis in 2017. This was done by a student, Caroline, who's been working with us. And basically, this is an illustration of the different processes that we've identified, with defining also the kind of process, the risk potential. So at the end here on the right side, you can see that there are some processes that don't have to go into formal recycling. They just need to be improved, but they have a low risk potential. And some of these processes, as Marcus already mentioned in the introduction, that are currently happening on the Old Fadama scrapyard should be done by formal recyclers and cannot happen in the way that they are currently happening on the scrapyard anymore due to the environmental pollution they are causing. So one of the strategies on the scrapyard as well is the formalization of informal sector workshops. So this has the objective to facilitate a process for informal sector workshops at the Old Fadama scrapyard to gain environmental permits. So the idea is really to look into the existing system and find out what is working and not wiping out the informal sector, but rather introducing them to formal recycling steps so that they find a space within this legal framework that currently exists in Ghana. So we are working on the introduction and selection of potential operator models for individual or cluster of workshops, really looking at how can the scrapyard best be operated so in order to gain environmental permits. Then the elaboration of standard operational procedures, which is what we showed for the compressor dismantling in the slides before, finding solutions for the land title issues that currently exist, and supporting the scrap workers with licensing procedures. So these are the current requirements that are the standards here in Ghana. So this is basically what we are supporting the scrap dealers in attaining. So the first stage, this is the implementation. The first stage is the finding potential, identifying potential operator models. We've started constructing sanitation facilities as well. This will be finalized within the next 1 or 2 months. We are also planning to have a temporary storage facility for hazardous fractions on the scrapyard to pilot this. Then the elaboration of standard operating procedures, the concept for potential land use titles, for workshops on the scrapyards and trainings on business registration. And then after that, we will evaluate all of these implementations that we've done and then plan further steps. And this is now back to my part. So I don't know if Marcus has joined, but this is where I would come in anyway. One of the strategies as well, moving back again from the technical aspects to the more social aspects and the training aspects as well. One of our strategies is capacity building. So we do this on 2 different levels. We have, first of all, the individual level of capacity building. So this is where we're talking here about the technical trainings that we're doing at the Technical Training Center. So this is basically where we try to equip the scrap workers with the academic information, but also mainly the practical knowledge that they need to improve their everyday work, with focus on the environment, health and safety, and economic efficiency. And we've also partnered up with other organizations that are working in the area or have been working with the people for a long time to complement these technical trainings with social workshops. So this is where we focus on strengthening the minority and vulnerable groups in the area. And the other level of capacity building that we're doing on the scrapyard is on an institutional level. So this has the objective to strengthen the Greater Accra Scrap Dealers Association, GASDA, in their position as a non-partisan leadership organization on the scrapyard, and potentially for the scrap dealers beyond the scrapyard, beyond the Old Fadama scrapyard. And generally also to support a more stable environment on the scrapyard, and this is what we're doing through the peace building process. Some of the implementations that I can show you, we have renovated the Technical Training Center in 2018, and we had a training of trainers in 2019 where 21 trainers were trained. You can see them at the bottom there. This is our group of trainers. We do regular trainer development through retreats and soft skills trainings. And what you can see on the right side here is one of our technical training courses that we're doing with the scrap workers on the scrapyard. We have over 1,500 workers actually, I think, trained in basic courses at the moment. We started out with very basic courses in manual dismantling of electronic waste. But we will start with advanced courses into 2021, also focusing on specific fractions, like, for example, collection collection and storage of batteries or separation of thermoplastics. And our partner organizations have trained over 1,000 minorities through social workshops. On an institutional level, we've renovated the GASDA office and given them, we give them regular soft skills trainings, for example, in administrative structures, so that they can run their office and keep track of their members. We're supporting them in the formation of a new association and their registration at the Trade Union Congress here in Ghana, at the TUC. Below you can see a photo of the opening of the Greater Accra Scrap Dealers Association new office. And regarding the peace building process, we have so far trained 60 peace champions in conflict mitigation. So they are constantly working on the ground in peace building. But also the photo that you can see here is the first meeting between two of the leaderships, the formal leadership which was mainly NDC, and the current leadership, which is mainly NPP. And at the first meeting, we actually needed security there because there was so much conflict between these two groups. Now, through this peace building process, we've managed to create already a new leadership. Although this leadership is temporary, we're trying to get them together. So here you can see the new leadership, which is made up of both the old leadership and the new leadership, so both NDC and NPP members. So another strategy for us on the Old Fadama scrapyard in our implementations is to strengthen the community. This is very important for us because my colleagues and I say on the scrapyard, the trotro, so the minibus in Ghana, as we call it, trotro does not leave when it is empty. So since the area and the community is already so fragile, we put a lot of emphasis on co-creation. So without the engagement of the community, without the engagement and conviction of the community, we cannot transform the scrapyard. So we have to make sure that we include them into this visioning that we have for the future of the scrapyard. So we make sure in our interventions that the community has ownership as well of the communities on the scrapyard. And as well, inclusiveness, very important aspect. We need to be sensitive about our interventions due to the complex system that we are working in, and not creating more divide than already exists. So we try to create platforms that bridge the gaps between the social groups. We try to create synergies between the different projects and organizations that are coming from external points of views to work within the space. And we try to provide access to information and learning. Some of the implementations that we have managed to successfully managed until now are the interactive theater. So this is an interactive development theater we've been doing since 2019. This is a means for us to give access to the community to certain topics that usually they would not have access to. So we discuss issues, challenges, or any topics really that regard their work or the community through stage plays. And then after the stage plays, we have interactions with the community. They get to ask us questions and give us feedback about these topics. Another approach to inclusiveness, we did a COVID-19 awareness campaign, and we realized that the awareness campaigns and the information about the COVID virus was always in English, and this wasn't really helpful for the Dagbani speaking community. So we created a multilingual COVID-19 awareness campaign that was launched and has currently reached almost 2.5 million people. And then to create ownership as well, we are currently working on an integrative sports ground concept. So this is where we encourage the community to do regular community cleanups before and after their trainings. And we're also training people and coaches in the area in using sport as a tool for development. And we do regular community meetings and events on the scrapyard. This is, I just saw that Marcus is back. Yes, so this has been our presentation. Marcus, you are right on time for the closing words.
Sorry, I'm so sorry but there was a electricity cut off in my area now, and I couldn't enter in any alternative Wi-Fi. Yeah, but I'm sure Veronica did a good presentation. Yeah, if you have, I hope we could give you some insight into our work at Agbogbloshi. There will be a second session tomorrow on the same issue, and I'm sure Alexander and other colleagues from our side, even from EPA and the KfW MESTI PIU program as well, give you a very good insight then in July, how we deal with the interface issues. Yeah.
Thank you, Marcus. Sorry.
Yes. No.
I would like to now share the questions that we have received for all of you. And I would like to ask the participants for their patience, because we have reached the end of the webinar. But if you have a few more minutes, 10, 15 minutes, we will try to share the questions and answers. We would like to first of all give the floor to Mr. Serumola, because we see that he has the hand raised, and then I will share the questions which we received through the chat.
Yes, thank you very much. This is Rumula from Botswana. My question is, how big is the project site? You talked about, that's scrapyard, but you didn't tell us exactly what was the size of it, ground, how big, or the actual size of the scrapyard. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I think either any of you perhaps could answer. I don't know who would like to take up this question, this answer.
Would you like to take it up? You're muted.
Yeah. Veronica, you have the current figures. Our current measures are more or less that the scrapyard has a dimension of about 20, where the scrapyard activities are, it's about 20 acres.
Thank you very much. Ms. Serumula, I think this answered your question.
And maybe we estimate that about 3,000 to 4,000 people work as scrap dealers or workshop owners on the scrapyard, and additional about 5,000 working all over in Accra as collectors, informal collectors.
Yes, to clarify as well from my side, because I showed an image of the space in my presentation, the whole area is about 70 acres. But as Marcus just mentioned, this condensed area where most of the economic activities are taking place is about 20 acres.
Thank you very much. I hope this answered your question, Ms. Serumula.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, good morning. I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Agabas, joining in from Tamale, Ghana. Basically, I would like to thank you all for this opportunity. And then with regards to Madam Lydia's presentation on what Mesty is doing, I would want to know best if one wants to indulge in this industry and then probably be a formal recycling company. What are the requirements in place that this person or startup would have to go through to actually certify the person being like a formal recycling company, recycling e-waste in Ghana?
So thank you very much, Agabas. I mentioned that we Mesty together with EPA and SRI developed what we call the technical guidelines. If you get a copy of this document, you would see the requirement clearly spelled out. But just to take you through a few of them, you must get a permit from EPA to become a recycler. And you must have a space of your own. There are requirements that they look out for. So you must show evidence of ownership of the land on which the space you are working from, the equipment that you have, the personnel, the systems that you have in place. They would come and inspect all these things. And then once you meet all the conditions, they give you the permit to enable you start the processes. But for you to get the detailed checklist of what exactly you need to do, I suggest that you will find the technical guidelines on the internet. So if you can download a copy, just go to the section on recyclers and look out for what's the conditions that you need to meet to be given a permit to operate as a recycler. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So basically, can I find out on MEST website?
No, you can find that on the EPA website. And even when you generally Google on Google, just put in technical guidelines EPA Ghana, you will get it.
Okay, thank you very much. And my second question is based in Ghana, is it actually legal to export waste, e-waste to let's say foreign country for safer recycling?
Okay, so You know, Ghana is a signatory to the Basel Convention, and there are guidelines for transboundary movement of waste. In the Act 917, that provision is recognized. That certainly there are some hazardous waste that we don't have the capacity to recycle here. So yes, it can be done, but there are guidelines. So you need to ensure that you go through that guidelines. And one of the things I know is part of the guidelines is the fact that you still need a permit from EPA to be able to do that.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Lydia. And please, with regards to Mr. Michael's presentation, he made mention of they having support systems basically for startup who are actually trying to contribute in the reduction of electronic waste in Ghana. So I would want to know basically how do, let's say, a startup have access to these supporting systems?
Is this perhaps a question for Ms. Eswa?
No,
It's for
please, it's
Marcus.
for Marcus.
Can you repeat your question, please, shortly? Sorry.
Yes, so I was asking, in your presentation, you made mention of GIZ actually have support systems supporting startups.
Support?
Yeah,
Okay.
supporting startups in Ghana. So I want to know what are the requirements, or probably how can a startup actually get access to these supporting systems you have in place?
What we currently provide is capacity.
Since currently Marcus is having problems connecting, maybe we will wait for him to come back, and I will now post some questions that we have received in the chat to Ms. Eswa. In particular, from Ms. Nivedita. Thank you, Ms. Eswa, for your presentation. I wanted to know more about the situation whether e-waste is being exported into Ghana. Has the government done anything to stop these transboundary movements of e-waste? The situation has been highlighted in various news reports and by various international organizations. Kindly throw some light on this issue. I would like also to ask another question which is related. Is there a focus on the informal sector? What about the producers, importers of EEE? So is the Ghanaian e-waste exported for the environmentally sound management? And this is similar to the question just posed, so this was already answered. So these two questions to Ms. Eswan, in summary, to shed some light on transboundary movements into Ghana, and what about producers, importers of EEE?
Thank you very much. So in the course of my presentation, I did mention the fact that government had passed the hazardous electronic and other, hazardous and electronic waste control and management act. In that act, government was to get a service provider to collect what we call the eco levy, and I remember mentioning it in my presentation as well. So the eco levy is collected at two fronts. Any importer or producer who is importing used electronic waste into the country, the service provider, in this case, which is FGS, is to inspect the goods at the country of origin. And per Schedule 5 of the Act, there are rates, fees that are to be charged for each of the products. Collect that from the importer before the goods are, transited into the country. So if you are importing used goods, there are fees that has to be paid, and the service provider does that inspection before it comes in here. For now, most of the goods that are coming in are new goods, and they also have to pay some fee for end-of-use recycling. But since we rolled out the collection of the eco-levy, we are yet to do an assessment to tell what are the numbers. Are the figures for used goods reducing? And are we getting only new products coming in? We haven't done that analysis yet. So we are unable to put our figures in that direction. But to answer the question, yes, the Act made provision that if you are bringing used goods, our service provider inspects and you pay some money. Sometimes when the inspection is done, you see that it's end-of-life products. So in that case, it doesn't get shipped into the country at all. At all. It's only when the products are in a state that can be used that they get the clearance to be shipped into the country. So I guess that I have, because the two questions are interrelated. The second one was that the focus is on informal sector. What about the importers and the producers? The importers and the producers is linked to the payment of the eco-levy, which when collected goes into the e-waste fund. But by way of education, there's always constant engagement between MESTI, EPA, the fund administrator, and the manufacturers and the producers. Anytime there are issues, for instance, when we rolled out, it looked as though the fees were on the high side. So they reached out to us through series of consultations and engagements with importers and producers. We arrived at new figures that was okay for both government and also the importers and producers. So that constant engagement and discussion is also in place between the importers, producers, and governments. Thank you. I hope I've answered the question.
Thank you very much for this very, very comprehensive answer. In relation to these questions, there are others. In particular, one is asking what is the advanced eco-levy requested, an example, for example, and is there the collection of e-waste? Is it done in the community? Do individuals, households have to take their e-waste to a collection center? Or is there an incentive to give up the waste to be dismantled? And then another question, I would like to know how you're managing the chemicals that are inside the e-waste, such as oil PCBs and other chemicals. And I would like to know experts of which field are involved in this project to define SOPs for the dismantling of e-waste. And I think with this one, with these questions, unless there are others, we will try to answer all questions that we received, also for time reasons. And these questions are to Ms. Eswa.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take the first two questions and I will leave the last question to either Marcus or Veronica to take it up. And what is the advanced eco-levy? So like I mentioned, with the passage of the Act 917 in 2016, government came up with a schedule to the Act, which is the Schedule 5. And the Schedule 5 identifies all e-waste types or fractions that the levy is applicable. So the Act says that a levy should be collected on e-waste. And the e-waste types that the levy should be collected on was also listed as Schedule 5 of the Act. And when you go to that Act, you see the HS code, you see the product label, and then you find a levy that is to be charged on each of that product label. So that is it. The eco levy is the fee that is charged on any electronic product that has been identified in the Act 917 anytime it's being imported into the country. That is the levy that has to be paid. Because once the product is used and it reaches its end of life, the product must be disposed of in an environmentally sound manner. And how do we do that? It is the eco levy that is collected at the time the product is coming into the country that will be used to ensure that the product is properly disposed of. So I hope that clarifies the eco levy. And then in terms of the collection of the waste, as Veronica showed in her presentation, you see that some of the boys go to the community with their trucks, house to house, corners, repair shops, anywhere that they think that they are likely to get these used electronic products. They go and collect it, and now in their carts and in their trucks, push it to one central location. And this time, when we are talking about is Agbogbloshi. So they bring it there. Once they bring it to Agbogbloshi, we indicated that we have started the pilot project on the incentive payment system. So on the incentive payment system, the guys bring the e-waste products to the facility, what we call a satellite handover center. You may want to call it a collection center. So the guys bring it there, and there are price schedules for all the products. And I said we have started with cables and mixed batteries. So once they get to the satellite handover center, the material is weighed. There's a weighing scale, is weighed. Based on the weight is multiplied by the price. The amount that is arrived at is now sent to the e-waste collector through mobile money platform. So they get their money before they leave. So if the question is to know if there is an incentive to give away the e-waste, yes, there is an incentive. And that's why the young people collect from the communities, from the household, from repair shops, and bring them to the handover center. The essence of the incentive is to prevent them from burning. The burning causes air pollution, which we are fighting against. So yes, there is an incentive for them. And before the incentive system was even put in place, what they were doing is to burn, using the cable as an example, was to burn the cable, and then they get the copper, which they go and sell and get money out of it. Thank you. Maybe Veronica will take the last one.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat the last question?
Yes, I will repeat the last question. The last question was basically, is the Ghanaian e-waste exported for environmentally sound management, or there are possibilities to recycle in Ghana? And then basically also if there are SOPs and also procedures that the licensed recyclers need to follow, or the dismantlers need to follow. I added this question because we received it in addition. The other question was also how to manage the chemicals which are inside the e-waste at the site, for example, PCBs or other chemicals, and if there are, which are the expertise in this field necessary for the sound management of e-waste at the site.
Yes. If I don't know if Marcus has dialed back into the call, otherwise I would answer this question. Okay, then I will answer the question. So the activities, one of the reasons why the activities on the Old Fadama scrapyard have such an influence on the environment and the soil constitution is because of the release of various hazardous substances that are incorporated in e-waste. So we have the PCBs, like was mentioned, we have the persistent organic pollutants as well, the POPs, we have brominated flame retardants as well, the BFRs, which are incorporated in the plastic casings of the copper cables. So we have hazardous substances in the electronic waste, and as much as possible, when dealing with these certain hazardous fractions, the aim is to do so in the formal sector. So dealing with hazardous substances should not be done on the scrapyard simply because the technology over there doesn't exist to properly handle these materials so that they don't cause pollution and harm to the human health. So this is where we put a lot of emphasis on the interfaces between the informal sector and the formal sector, because some of the process steps for the devices that contain these materials can be done on the scrapyard, but when it comes, as soon as a process step would cause the spilling or the spilling of one of these hazardous substances, the aim should be to really bring it into formal recycling so that it can be handled properly. One of the examples is the incentive system that Lydia has also mentioned. This is where we are buying out the cables from the scrapyard so that they are not burned, because burning the cables would release the brominated flame retardants contained in the plastic casings of the cable. So this is one of the interfaces where once we realize that there is going to be a step that is going to release some of these hazards, we try to create an interface, buy out the material from the informal recyclers and get it to proper recycling. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. I will now share the last question, because for this session we have gone over the time, and we need to close. If you have more questions, we invite you to send them by email and we'll forward them to the presenters. The last question is on remediation of sites. Are there any provisions in your national e-waste policy through which contaminated sites can be remediated? I think this is a question to Miss Eswa.
Francisca, can you please go over it again?
Yes. Are there any provisions in your national e-waste policy through which contaminated sites can be remediated?
Contaminated sites. In terms of policy direction, yes, there is. In fact, but we haven't started any program at it yet. In terms of on paper and in terms of policy, yes, we are looking at doing that, but we don't have any activity currently on the ground at the remediation of contaminated sites.
Thank you very much for this answer, and we invite the participants to send further questions by email. We hope to have addressed the majority of the questions, which we have tried to group according to the subject and the type of question. And I will now close the questions and answers session because we need to conclude the session, which has gone over the time for quite some time. So I pass the floor to Dan for the closure of the session. Let's thank all the presenters, Ms. Eswa, Marcus, and also Veronica, for this very, very informative and interesting session, and for your availability to stay with us and answer the questions. Thank you very much.